This Prismatic Titan build lets you farm Warlord's Ruin without breaking a sweat. Take a look at these two clips. This first one is the standard method that most Destiny 2 players will recommend, utilizing Tractor Cannon and 1-2 punch. The second clip is the prismatic setup that I'm going to show you today. Now you tell me which one looks simpler and more consistent to pull off. I farmed Warlord's Ruin's first boss Rathil dozens of times, and this build consistently delivers the best results. So in this video, I'll show you the main setup I use to farm this boss. I'll go over the best weapons for making this build work, as well as explain how it's so easy that any Titan player can pull it off. But first, if you're not farming this boss, you're missing out on incredible loot. Remember now, I'm just talking about the loot pool that Rathil drops. First off, we've got Indebted Kindness. This is an arc weapon and was actually the first special ammo rocket assisted frame sidearm. Say that 5 times fast. In the same line as the Call and Aberrant Action, this one here being the arc version. Impulse Amplifier and Jolt are the standout perks for this weapon. Rocket assisted frames are so good in all content because of the punch they pack while still having great ammo economy. You can't go wrong with this weapon. Next, there's Vengeful Whisper, a strand precision frame combat bow. Explosive head and or archer's tempo combined with precision instrument are what you'll want to farm for. The double damage perks are incredible on this already hard-hitting precision frame bow. However, I'd argue that you should have one version of this bow with Slice. I've only recently come around to using Slice and crafting it on weapons, but being able to apply a 30 to 35% outgoing damage debuff to enemies is invaluable. I almost started using this to farm Warlord's Ruin, but I noticed my arrows were getting stuck too often in the cage when I tried to shoot Blighted Eyes, and it ruined my runs. However, I've been known to suck at this game and make poor decisions from time to time, so take my words with a grain of salt.
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
Then we have Dragon Colt Sickle, a strand caster frame sword, only one of 2 in the entire game. I consider this to be particularly strong for Titans running the powerful prismatic combo of Frenzied Blade plus Shackle Grenade. As with all caster frames, your short range sword is now able to fire off a wave of energy. Think Ichigo's Kitsuga Tensho! Capable of stunning overload champions and without any damage fall off from the distance traversed. Take either Assassin's Blade or Unrelenting plus Hatchling or Chain Reaction to make quick work of adds. Or there's a combination of Slice and your choice of Whirlwind, Golden Tricorn, or Surrounded. Any variation of those will give you a huge defensive boost and some of the biggest damage buffs in the game. You'll be telling your fire teams to stand back.
Let me solo her.
As you can tell, I love this weapon and it's the main reason why I started farming Warlord's Ruin in the first place. And lastly, we have the dungeon specific armor pieces, aka the Dark Age set. Wondering which exotics and prismatic setup make this build possible? Well, the 2 main components to get this build off the ground are an underrated exotic gauntlet and a vortex frame heavy sword. If you happen to watch my last video, then you know I've jumped on board the hype train for Stronghold. It's surprising how well this single exotic lets you tackle Master and Grandmaster content. Maximizing your sword's defensive stats and providing restoration are almost like a cheat code to more seasoned and knowledgeable players. One thing I do want to correct from that previous video is the fact that it doesn't matter which type of guard your sword has, because Stronghold will maximize its defensive stats. The frame is the only thing that matters, and technically whether it's an energy or power weapon. I'm looking at you, Ergosum. Aggressive frames will be the tankiest sword archetypes, so that's generally what you want to go for when soaking up damage for your team. However, we take a different approach for Warlord's Ruin. Our swords of choice will be Archconductor Ergosum and Falling Guillotine. You might think Falling Guillotine is a poor choice here, but I promise it'll make sense once I break down our offensive synergies. Let's get to the prismatic setup. Twilight Arsenal is a cornerstone of our strategy. The chunk to Rathil's health bar is decent, but leaving the boss in a weakened state is what allows us to burst him quickly through multiple layers of damage. Thrust for evasion and low cooldown orb generation is a no-brainer. Frenzied Blade, no surprise, and Suppression Grenade are our abilities of choice. You might be scratching your head on our grenade choice, but it'll make sense to you later on. Hint, it has something to do with our seasonal artifact perks. Generally, Consecration and Knockout are the best aspects to take for Prismatic Titans due to the combination of damage and survivability. Even though I tried all other variations, I always came back to these two. There's no reason to stray from them. Our game plan against Rathil is to constantly be in his face, never running or hiding behind the broken ruins. So surviving attacks from every direction is a must. That's why we stick with what shall now be dubbed Noxecration. Okay, let's knock out these fragment pieces now. Pun intended. Fragment of Protection for the damage resilience. Facet of Courage. Yeah, the slight buff to our Consecration against weakened targets is nice, but mainly I take it for the plus 10 to Discipline. Moving on. Fragment of Dominance applies weaken to our suppression grenades. Facet of Dawn for that consistent radiance which buffs our weapons. And Facet of Purpose to round it off, providing us with an overshield every time we pick up an Orb of Power. For Warlord's Ruin, stat distribution is pretty straightforward. You'll want to focus your stats into Resilience for that maximum 30% damage reduction at tier 10. Then, max out Strength for Consecration Energy and Orb Generation. You could argue that Recovery is a tertiary stat to focus, but I find that the amount of fast healing we get from Stronghold's Restoration, coupled with Orb Generation from Consecration, and the Reaper mod, are way more than enough to sustain us. So I would recommend putting the rest of your points into Discipline. If nothing else, your Suppression Grenade will be up more often, meaning you'll weaken the boss more often and boost your damage in the process. Out of the 12 perks you can take from the seasonal artifact at any one time, only 5 of them are actually beneficial to us. Blade Stamina will refund us back sword ammo for rapidly defeating enemies. Radiant Orb gives us a second method for becoming radiant and keeping our damage buff. We take Galvanic Armor, since Knockout is one of our prismatic fragments. 30% damage reduction every time we're amplified is just too good to pass up. I said it before, but Knockout plus Galvanic Armor is overpowered this season, and I'm honestly surprised Bungie hasn't nerfed it to the ground yet. But as long as they allow it, I'll be utilizing it on every Titan build. Argent Blade boosts our sword damage and charge rate while we have an armor charge. Finally, Expanding Abyss empowers our void damage against weakened enemies. I know I just threw a lot at you, but I bet you've pieced together how this setup is going to work now. Multiple layers of defensive measures leave us unkillable. Layers of damage stack onto our Falling Guillotine to cut down the boss. As straightforward as that is, I'll even give you the attack rotations to use on Rathil, the method for clearing out ads, and more. I want you to go into that boss encounter without a single doubt in your mind. But first, let me quickly cover the weapons and perks you'll need. Otherwise, you're only running your build at half capacity. The kinetic slot is the only one up for preference. Here's what I generally look for: quick shooting, non-rocket type, quick to reload, and primary ammo. If you cover those bases, then you can't really go wrong. Personally, I would recommend using a weapon that has Slice. I prefer the call as a Slice applier, but I only manage to blow myself up when I'm in the cages. Hence why I originally said non-rocket type. So Breachlight is my number 2 option. Breachlight with Slice is our go-to for shooting down those blighted eyes quickly and applying a 30% damage debuff to Rathil. Your perk in the 4th column won't matter for this weapon since we don't use it to kill or damage any enemies, but that's just what matches my playstyle. Arc Conductor Ergo Sum for ad clear is still king in our energy slot. Its consistency and ease of use is simply unmatched. I like to take the caster frame since it allows me to hit groups of enemies from clear the other side of the map. However, exotic class item drops are 100% RNG, so I can look the other way if you're stuck with an aggressive or wave frame. Yuck.
I'm kidding. Come on, lighten up.
That brings us to Falling Guillotine and the power slot. After testing and testing, so much testing, I finally settled on this sword with attrition orbs plus bait and switch as a perk combination. Once I knew I wanted a straightforward and consistent playstyle that utilized Weakened, Expanding Abyss, and a Void Sword, I went through at least 30 variations of Crown Splitter, Double-Edged Answer, Chivalric Fire, the other half. Too many weapons and perks. I don't want to bore you with all the details and methods of testing, so just trust me when I say Falling Guillotine with Attrition Orbs and Bait and Switch was the only combination that consistently hit between 1.8 and 2 million damage in a single DPS phase. You could even boost this damage slightly more by enhancing the perks on this weapon, but 2 million was enough damage for me to consider this build viable. So take this loadout if you want to squeeze as much damage as possible from your Void Sword while tanking everything Rathil throws at you. The slightly lowered sword guarding compared to Crown Splitter is negligible. You won't miss that aggressive frame one bit. We've talked about the prismatic build, the weapons have been covered, so your only remaining questions are probably how does this build work in action, and how quickly can you farm Rathil with it. I'll give you the short answers first. This build is super simple, consistent, and it will take you 6 to 7 minutes to run through this encounter. Possibly quicker if you spend the materials to enhance attrition orbs and bait and switch as I mentioned earlier. The slightly longer answers are as follow. Use Ergo Sum's heavy attack to quickly clear adds before they start becoming a nuisance and ruin your DPS phase. Use Stronghold's Restoration to stay safe. Use Twilight Arsenal plus Falling Guillotine to chunk his health bar whenever your super energy is full. If you don't have super energy, pop Transcendence and use your grenades and consecrations for the damage phase. Rinse and repeat. Plus, you can use Breachlight to apply Slice to the boss and his adds whenever you have downtime or you think it's necessary. The only two things you really have to think about are using your Restoration and activating Bait and Switch. I use Restoration to keep my health up while standing on the totems. However, I make sure that I am able to activate Restoration one more time right before the boss becomes vulnerable to damage. That way, I'm healing straight through any damage the boss or his minions dish out. The Falling Guillotine rotation is pretty simple. I have my Ergo Sum equipped, then I activate Twilight Arsenal while I'm in the air just above Rathil. After the 3 axes are thrown, I hit him with Ergo Sum on the way down. I switch to Breachlight as soon as I touch the ground and fire off one shot. Then switch to Falling Guillotine and slash at him for the remainder of his vulnerability. This will net you an easy 1.6 million. To squeeze out more damage, you'll want to fit in about 3 heavy attacks while he's still in that weakened state. But that's not really necessary. Either way, you should be able to take him out in 4 phases. But if heavy ammo RNG is not on your side, then 5 rotations. And just FYI, that 6-minute time frame I mentioned before was for killing him in 5 rotations. I really wanted to add a playthrough for this boss encounter with live commentary, that way you could see more of my thought process and decision making. At the same time, this video was already starting to stretch out a little longer than I had originally planned. But if you're interested in seeing me use this build with commentary, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to put out those type of videos for you all if that's something that you'd like to see. But earlier I mentioned how Stronghold is such an undervalued and downplayed exotic. It really is second to none in terms of tanking Master Plus content. Today's video doesn't quite do it justice because we're more focused on striking a balance of defense and offense for sake of survivability and time. So check out this video to see why I consider Stronghold to be so powerful and why Knockout is an overwhelmingly strong prismatic aspect in the final shape.